Good evening. My name is Karina Lopez. I am the acting chair for tonight's East Bay Community Energy Meeting. This is a Board of Directors meeting for Wednesday, January 2022. The time is 5 p.m. Pacific Standard. Welcome everybody to tonight's meeting. Our chair, Diane Martinez, will be joining us a little later on in the meeting. There was a scheduling conflict for today. I'd like to also thank Lori for being our clerk this evening, and she was going to help us keep this meeting going, and I will be deferring to her throughout the meeting. Thank you. So we'll go ahead and do roll call. Go ahead, clerk.
Thank you. City of Albany.
Here.
City of Livermore. City of Piedmont. City of San Leandro.
Present.
Thank you. City of Tracy. Tracy, no. City of Oakland.
Here.
City of Emeryville.
Clerk, if I can just have you on pause. It's come to my attention, there are a couple of members that are on the other side, and can you bring them over to us panelists, please? McCarthy and Patino. Yes.
Yeah, it's Jaime Patino and Councilmember Kona McCarthy are the two that we need to bring over.
Okay, I got Jamie, and who's the other one?
Kona McCarthy.
I don't see her on here unless she's got a
It
phone
says
number.
it starts council member.
Oh, I see.
Jaime, I'm here.
Okay, thank you, Jaime.
Is there anyone else on the attendees that needs to be moved over?
Not at this time.
Thank you. So let me go to the ones that did not attend. Piedmont.
Kona McCarthy, yes.
Thank you. City of Tracy.
Present. Thank you.
City of Emeryville. City of Hayward.
Present.
Thank you. City of Union City.
Present.
Thank you. City of Berkeley. City of Pleasanton.
Here.
Thank you. City of Fremont. City of Dublin. City of Newark.
Here.
Thank you. Alameda County.
Here.
We have 11, so we have a quorum. Thank you.
The Community Advisory Committee is also here.
Thank you.
Also, I would just note that Director Cox is in the attendees.
Yeah, she is now on the attendees list. Yep.
She
Teresa
need to
Cox.
be-
Lori, it's Teresa Cox.
Does she need to be moved over?
Yes.
Yes.
She is our representative for the city of Fremont.
City of Fremont, thank you. So we have 12 in attendance.
Thank you very much, clerk. So we have a quorum this evening. We'll move on to item 2, and that is the Pledge of Allegiance. Member Hannon, if you can lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance this evening, be very grateful. Thank you.
My pleasure. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much for that. Item 3, under public comment, clerk.
This item is reserved for persons wishing to address the board on any EBCE related matters that are not otherwise on the meeting's agenda. Public comments on matters listed on the agenda shall be heard at the time the matter is called. Members of the public who wish to address the board are limited to 2 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you very much,
And-
Clerk. Do we have anybody in the, with their hand raised?
Is there anybody wishing to speak to the board? Yes, I have Jessica. Let me move her over
Thank you.
or allow her to talk. Jessica?
Jessica, you'll have 2 minutes and all speakers this evening will have 2 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. Jessica Tovar of the East Bay Clean Power Alliance, and I just wanted to mention 2 things. The first one is that through the CPUC, they are going to be hearing an item on net energy metering, the policy, the local solar incentive policy program. And we are very concerned of the fact that it is being threatened right now. And we do see it as a local solar incentive killer, giving more power to the utilities and taking away our local power of being able to solarize and get incentives for the energy that is produced at a local level, which is the only true cleanest form of energy that folks could be offering to the community. So that is a huge concern. We are trying our best to get the attention of Governor Gavin Newsom. So I encourage everyone to call the governor, urge the governor to take a stand to protect net energy metering. What we should be doing is actually really addressing issues of the energy system and actually strengthening these local solar policies. And yeah, so I just wanted to encourage folks to do that. I believe the item will be up for vote in February. But we are encouraging folks to speak at the January 27th meeting of the CPUC. That's one thing, and I have mentioned before my concern around community innovation grants that were launched in 2019 as part of the local development business plan. It was not designed to be a one-off, but it's a way that nonprofit organizations in Alameda County and Tracy can apply for money for community innovation projects and planning. And I hope that East Bay Community Energy would continue to offer that, because that opportunity is just as important as sponsoring our local sports and the other things that get funded through East Bay Community Energy. Thank you very much. Clean power to the people.
I have another member that would like to speak. Alita Dupree.
Thank you, Vice Chair Lopez. Alita Dupree for the record. My pronouns are she and her. As I talk to you about general matters of EBCE. And EBCE is very important to me. It's an organization that I am proud to be associated with, even though I don't have electricity in my name with you. But I speak to you in the sense of
Well, it looks like we're having a technical glitch.
Yeah, let me see if I can get him to.
can you hear
There
me
you go.
now?
Now we go.
Go
Okay,
ahead and
thank you.
restart the clock for him, please. And if you can display the clock, that would be great. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Chair Lopez. Alita Dupree for the record. My pronouns are she and her. It's always good to be back with you. I speak to you as an ordinary user of residential electricity, about 11,000 kilowatt hours a year. And I frame my comments in that with the sense of equity, in that even if you can't put solar panels on your own roof, you should still be able to get renewable electricity because I've rented all my life and I've never been able to control my own real estate. And storage is essential, and home electrification and electrification of various kinds of transportation is important because they are all ways that the public can participate in clean energy. I don't own a car, but if the bus is electric, or if I ride BART, I can participate. And I have an all-electric home, but I wonder, what is the cigarette equivalent of gas stoves and water heaters and furnaces running in people's homes and apartments? I don't have that answer, but I'm sure the answer is somewhere out there. And while I am a drop in the bucket, the amount of electricity that I use in a year would only run the New York City subway for about 3 minutes. But yet there are hundreds of thousands of people in the EBCE district. It all adds up to much more than what these big transportation systems use in a year. And so when I think about the surpluses that we see of solar energy during the day and that are not being used because there's too much of it, and yet at night the sun isn't shining and we have to burn fuel to generate some of that energy, how do we bridge the gap and avoid the infamous duck curve that I often see on CalISO charts? So I do believe in the work EBCE is doing, but we have to do it on as big a scale as possible. And I think we're doing more than most other agencies that I've seen. So I look forward to your meeting tonight so we can make the decisions that will make these things happen. Thank you.
Thank you. I do not see any further raised hands, so we will move on to the fourth item this evening. That's the consent calendar. Would any member like to pull an item? I do not see any hands raised for a poll, so clerk, go ahead and do a roll call vote to approve the consent calendar.
City of
I'd like to
Albany.
make a motion. Yeah, I
I'm
was just gonna,
sorry.
yeah, I was just gonna ask for that. Thank you. I'd like to have a motion.
Marquez will move the consent calendar.
Thank you, Member Marquez. Second, please.
Second.
And that would be whom?
Dan.
Thank you very much.
And with
Member
Oakland
Cal-
second. And the first is who?
Marquez. from Hayward.
Lisa Marquez.
City of
Hayward.
Hayward.
Can I just check? I had an excused absence in December. Part of the consent calendar is are the minutes. Is there a problem with my voting on the consent calendar as a whole, or does that have to be pulled?
No, you can vote on it.
You can vote on the minutes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Council. So we'll go
You ready
ahead
for
and
the vote?
take a roll. Yes, go ahead and do a roll call vote, please.
Thank you. City of Albany,
Yes.
City of Livermore,
Yes.
City of Piedmont,
Yes.
City of San Leandro,
Yes.
City of Tracy,
Yes.
City of Oakland,
Aye.
and for the record, is City of Emeryville still absent?
I'm here now.
Okay, great. Would you like to vote, City of Emeryville,
Will you let me know what we're voting on?
on the consent calendar?
And I, yes, thank you.
Thank you. City of Hayward,
Aye.
City of Union City,
Aye.
City of Berkeley, are they in attendance? No, okay. City of Pleasanton,
Aye.
City of Fremont,
Aye.
City of Dublin. They're absent still, okay. City of Newark, Newark,
Aye.
and County of Alameda.
Aye.
Passes by unanimous vote. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I want to thank everybody for your patience this evening with me in the acting role. And I'll give it over back to Chair Martinez for the remainder of the meeting.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. I appreciate you so much stepping in for me this evening. If you'd like to continue to get practice in the big meeting, I'd be happy to leave you with a gavel, but otherwise,
Whatever
I'm
you'd like
ready
to do.
take over.
I defer to your chair.
Okay.
No.
Very good. I will, I'll go ahead and take that virtual gavel from you, and that'll bring us to item 9 on our regular agenda. This is the CEO report, and I will cede the floor to Nick Chassett.
Thank you very much. First want to note, we do have an executive committee coming this month, but it is not this Friday. It was a typo. My apologies. It's next Friday. So that would be the 29th of January, our regularly scheduled 4th Friday. Is that right? 29th? I think that's right.
28.
28th.
Yes.
28th.
28th.
There we go.
Is next
Friday is the 21st, I guess. Great. We do have FAP and MRL committees coming. And again, my apologies. I think we're still working to schedule those meetings. And we do have some new board members too. So, in our February meeting, I was reminded that we do need to make some formal appointments of our new board members to who I'm not sure we have today. So Councilmember Kumagai is not here. I believe he's our one new board member. So that is really the extent of my CEO report. We do have a new staff member who joined actually today. So we did not today was his first day, so I did not have an opportunity to include an introduction, but we will introduce him next month. He is our new business account analyst or associate. But why don't I hand it to Annie, who's going to give us an update on our Renewable 100 transition process. We have quite a few customers that have now transitioned to 100% renewable energy.
Hi, good evening. We are in fact in the middle of the transition as we are about halfway through the month and customers transition on their billing cycle. But this is just a quick snapshot. In fact, it's from the beginning of the month, given when we have to prepare documents for these meetings. I'll be coming back again next month, and I think again in March, because February is when customers will actually see this on their bill. But the primary takeaway I wanted to make sure the board received is that things are looking very good. So we got out the 2 notices prior to the transition. We updated all the back end. We had wonderful partnership with local city staff members who pushed out this information through their newsletters, the local chambers of commerce. We had some in-person events. In the first half of December, we had a number of webinars. And what I'm seeing is that we have less than a 1% increase in the opt-out numbers for the cities that are impacted, but we have a fairly substantial opt-down or stay on right choice number, which to me says we are informing our customers, they understand they have a choice and they're choosing to remain with us. So you can see if you go to that section of the report, there is a table, there are some yellow columns over to the right-hand side, and that is indicating the change in these numbers from November. So we sort of put a stake in the ground to say, here's sort of our normal state, and then comparing it to the beginning of January after we'd done all the marketing, education, and outreach. And what we're seeing is that, yes, people are making an informed choice and they are not leaving our service. So again, we are still just doing that this month. It's going to show up on their bill starting the second half of this month into next month. And so I would anticipate some of those numbers will continue to go up. We also just sent out our second notice, but everything is looking very positive and really the best case scenario.
Great, thank you, Annie. Nick, is there any more of your report?
I don't have anything else in my CEO report to cover. I did, it's not explicitly here, but I did want to share two things that may that have been raised. No need for comment. So one is we have, and this was raised yesterday at our CAC meeting, some requests by members of the public and members of Sierra Club as well to provide a review of our carbon intensity and, to discuss kind of why we have seen an increase in our carbon intensity in 2021 relative to the past. And so in February, we're planning to bring forward an item to walk through both what's happening in our portfolio today, how some of the accounting rules have changed and, created a short-term, I wouldn't say increase isn't the right word, but the accounting rules have changed such that our California greenhouse gas emissions are higher than they were before, because we do buy renewable energy at times that is from out of state where the emissions are reductions are happening in other states. Now, climate change is a global phenomenon. Carbon reductions in Oregon, carbon reductions in California, you can sort of parse that. But that has been a change in the accounting regime. We're going to cover that. But we're also probably most importantly going to be walking through in more detail our pathway to 100%. If you recall, many of you, I think very, very happily voted to set a 100% clean energy goal by 2030. And what we will be doing is providing an overview of our current roadmap to go from where we are today to 100% clean energy in 2030. So that's one item I wanted to share. Another item, and this is something that's been brought up at a number of our CAC meetings and our board meetings and public comment, and that relates to community innovation grants. So while we are bringing forward an item today that staff views as the fulfillment of the direction the board gave us this past summer to add $250,000 for grants to support low and moderate income electrification. We do recognize that that there's interest in us doing more. So in many of the power purchase agreements that we have entered into with utility scale renewables, wind and solar, we have negotiated community investment dollars, in the hundreds of thousands of dollars. If you recall, I believe 150,000 or so of those community investment dollars were actually invested in COVID relief. So part of our broader $2 million COVID relief, there was 100,000 or 200, somewhere between 100 and $200,000 came from these community investment dollars that we had negotiated in our power purchase agreements. Over the next couple of years, we have hundreds of thousands of dollars of those community investment funds that are going to be coming in. And so we're going to be working on a plan that we're going to bring to the board and to the CAC to create a process to allocate those dollars to the community grants for clean energy, climate innovation, and education. And so that's something that we're going to be working on in the coming months. And you will hear about probably in committee first, and then eventually at the board in time. So those are the two things I just wanted to share that I wasn't able to include in the CEO report itself.
Very good. Thank you, Nick. Any questions from the board? I see a hand from Member Marquez. You're recognized.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the update. I just wanted to ask, first I wanted to compliment Annie and her team. The rollout with the City of Hayward has been relatively smooth. I appreciate all the outreach efforts and all the touch points. Just wanted to get clarity. For those that opt out or opt down, do they have to wait an entire year to re-enroll should they change their mind?
If a customer opts out, yes, they go ahead, Annie. I was going to say, if a customer opts out, there is a period of time, I believe it's a year before they can return to service, but they can opt down. They could opt back up tomorrow, and the next day they could decide to opt back down again, and they could opt back up. I think for very large customers, at some point we might call them to say, how can we help you think about your options? But for opting up and down, it's something you can choose daily.
There's more
weekly,
flexibility
monthly.
with that.
Yeah.
Okay, that's good to know. And we are going to be tracking those, the larger customers,
Yes.
so we could do
yes.
additional outreach if necessary. Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. And seeing no other board hands raised, I will go ahead and allow for public comment. Jessica Tovar has their hand raised. Would the clerk please unmute Jessica? You will have 2 minutes.
I wasn't sure if I could speak on this, but yeah, I did fail to mention really quick just appreciation for EBCE staff, JP, Melissa Brandt, who I know are speaking out in support of net energy metering, and Dan Kalb, who I know members of East Bay Clean Power Alliance were excited that you spoke at the last CPUC meeting. So I'm just throwing that in, but I wanted to just appreciate that Nick just responded to some of our comments about wanting to see community innovation grants reinstated and offered every year to nonprofit organizations throughout the East Bay and Tracy. And certainly the other comments that have come from Sierra Club. I do appreciate that those are acknowledged and that there's a plan moving forward. And that is why I say to the community many times and many times again that we created this agency because we want some accountability in our community, and we're really thinking forward on how energy can work for our communities. So I want to just acknowledge that. Thank you.
Great, thank you. The next speaker is Alita Dupree. Madam Clerk, please unmute Alita Dupree. And Speaker Dupree, you will have 2 minutes.
Thank you again, Chair Diane Martinez. Alita Dupree for the record, she and her. Very good report. It shows that we're making it easy for people to make these decisions as to how to get their electricity sourced. It's as easy as going to a website. I wish that more utilities would make it that easy. I have solar being piped into my home, but I went through a more complicated process where I'm at this time. So when I get back to Emeryville, I'll be back in EBC territory using your electricity. I hope my hotel is running on that. And I'm looking forward to the report about the carbon intensity in the portfolio as far as the power that is coming in that is not renewable. We want to see where it's coming from and how we can reduce that number of carbon intensity. So I'm pleased that we're not losing too many people along the way. We want people to stay so we can keep the lights on. And we want to ensure that we always have a value proposition. I think this report is putting us in that direction. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We have no other hands raised. I'll just remind members of the public that if you're joining us via Zoom, you would use the raise hand feature to be recognized, or if you're calling in, press *9. So I'm going to close public comment on this item. And just for clarification for the public, there are times where I don't ask for public comment on informational items that the board is not voting on. However, if we do any deliberation on that item, I generally will allow for public comment at that time. And so that's why sometimes you'll see me call for it and sometimes you won't. But that generally is just up to the chair. So next item up is our Community Advisory Committee report, for which we have an attachment that was sent to the board earlier today. And do we have Anne Olivia in the room with us? I see your name. Are you there?
Yes, I am here. Thank you,
Chair.
much,
You have the
Chair.
floor.
Wonderful. So the Community Advisory Committee met yesterday, as Monday was a holiday. The majority of our meeting was spent on topics that are covered by this body tonight, so I won't go over them. We did request that next month there be a presentation on the power content and the climate contributions of our energy mix. So thank you, Nick, for responding to that so quickly and bringing that forth. And the rest of it we'll just cover in this meeting. So our next meeting is February 14th, if any of you are interested in this.
Very good. I see your hand raised, Member Marquez. Is that just left over from the last item?
Yes, I'm sorry about that.
Oh, no problems. So seeing no questions from the board on the CAC report, I'll thank the chair of the CAC, and we will move on to item 11, which is the program to support and scale low to moderate income building electrification and efficiency. Colleagues, I'll remind you that the block power item came to us in November, and we are hearing it again because we wanted to get some more information. So I will cede the floor to staff for a presentation.
Good evening, directors. My name is Becky Menton, Program Manager for Building Electrification and Energy Efficiency. I'll be sharing the floor tonight with Grace Park Bradbury from Block Power. To get started, I wanted to briefly retouch what Chair Martinez just discussed. We did bring them to the board. Thank you. Can we go back one slide, Madam Clerk? There should be one more. Perfect. Okay, great. So we did discuss this item in the November board meeting. Would say the board of directors was largely very supportive of the program concept and design, but there were some specific questions that the board requested we come back with some additional information on. So this presentation tonight is structured specifically to respond to those questions that were raised. That includes providing some evidence of the project economics, particularly as they relate to the customer experience, clarifying any non-monetary benefits that may be a part of the project, and clarifying the customer protections and sales process. So thank you. We can move to the next slide. Just as a quick recap, overall tonight, we're proposing a $1.4 million investment. $1 million will be provided in project capital. That capital will sit in the junior capital position. This has an overall influence of reducing the interest rate that is available to the customer. In addition, we're proposing an additional $400,000 that would be offered in grants for low to moderate income customers. The eligibility for that is defined as up to 120% of the area median income. To make us whole in this program, we're accessing about $500,000 that were allocated in this year's program budget for the purpose of LMI electrification. The CEO report included a discussion of the additional $250,000, which we're going to be applying to this program for grants to low to moderate income customers. And then we'll be coming back with an additional budget request for fiscal year 2022 for $650,000 to make us whole. I also want to mention again that this is a proposed sole source arrangement with Block Power. Staff researched the availability of financing and leasing programs that specifically target electrification and low to moderate income communities. Block Power is unique in this space. In addition, we really appreciate Block Power's emphasis on working with local contractors for the installation services and the leveraged capital that Block Power is bringing to the table to overall provide more scale for the program. We can move to the next slide. So when we move to the next slide, we'll be diving in a little bit to the answers to some of the questions that were raised. To recap on eligibility, this program is targeting customers up to 120% of area median income. We see this as two major tranches of the customers. There are those that are at 80% or below area median income, and those that are from 80% AMI up to 120% AMI. We're targeting higher incentive levels for those lower income customers. For the moderate income tranche, we think that the subsidized financing in and of itself will be a really powerful program to offer. We are also providing additional incentives to help cover certain measures that sometimes fall outside of conventional rebate programs. Of the type of measures that are installed in this program, we see conventional energy efficiency upgrades, including insulation, lighting, appliances. We also see electrification measures, including heat pump space conditioning and heat pump water heating. And then there are also measures that address the health, comfort, and safety of the building, lead, mold, and asbestos abatement issues, as well as the ability to finance solar and battery storage installations on these properties as well. So we can move to the next slide. So I apologize for the small type, but what you're seeing here is a sample of some of the projects that Block Power has installed over the past year in our service area. And what you see is that there is a mix in these scopes of electrification measures, insulation, lighting, your traditional energy efficiency measures as well. That's a great package. We love to see that because the efficiency helps the affordability of the electrification measures. So I just want to underscore that this package of measures is the most affordable, has the best non-energy benefit contributions for the homeowner, and also advances our goals for electrification. Walking through the columns, I want to emphasize that the numbers that are provided here are averages from the project examples that Block Power provided. Overall, the average project cost ended up close to $35,000. Average monthly payments, this is a net monthly payment levels around $52. The total customer payments were around 11,000. And then we're looking at 2.2 tons of GHG savings per home. A few other notes from the information provided on this slide. The projects will benefit not only from EBCE investment, but will also be leveraging incentives available through the Bay Run program and the recently launched tech program. So we're really looking to leverage our dollars with as much external dollars as available and improve the value to the customer. The overall lifetime payments that customers make under these programs are far below the total project cost. So this program is creating value for these customers. The other thing I think is really important from these initial projects that were performed is that the concept that this program is interesting and attractive to customers has been tested. Customers are interested in signing up for the program as it was. So we can move to the next slide. Okay, great. So there was a question from the board around the customer economics through participation in the program, and that is what this slide is addressing. I'm going to walk through each of the columns to give a clear picture of the information that's provided here. The first column is the total expected project cost. This is pre-incentive. So before Bay Run, before tech, before EBCE's investment, that's what we're anticipating for the project cost. The top rows represent what the project would look like with EBCE engagement. The bottom row is a hypothetical program without EBCE coming to the table. The one thing I want to note in this first column is that Block Power understands and has accepted the fact that they will be paying prevailing wage to installers and contractors on this program as a result of EBCE investment. We are expecting that to increase the project cost slightly. Next column over are the grants that EBCE is providing to help reduce the project cost for customers. The top row is customers 80% below AMI. The bottom row is customers who are above 80% AMI. And this is the maximum incentive that a customer could get. The next column over is the expected monthly payment per the terms of financing that are being proposed tonight. You can see again that they're lower for the customers with the higher incentive and higher otherwise. Next column over is the expected bill savings. These figures are drawn from Block Power's previous experience and from the previous projects that were provided. The result of the expected monthly payment, the expected bill savings, gives us the next column, which is the net monthly payment. We are anticipating that most customers that enroll and participate in this program will have a net monthly cost associated with that participation. The next column over shows the total of all customer payments over the life of participation in the program. And what I think is important to draw away here is that a $37,000 project costs $20,000 for that upper income tranche and $10,000 for the lower income tranche. So we're really hoping to create a pathway for customers to access these large projects that create many benefits. The bottom right box gives us an example of the estimated number of projects. Now, Block Power can speak to this as well, but what we're hearing from their experience in the market is that the incentives may be the limiting factor in this program. The cost of these projects and measures can be so high that the presence of incentives is really necessary in order to drive down costs and make them affordable. So the estimated number of projects is not based on the total capital that's available, but is actually constrained by the incentives available. We're hopeful that we can beat 60. We see 60 as a minimum. but that explains a little bit about the logic for why that's there. So the last thing that I think I want to speak to on this slide is just, again, the fact that our presence of debt in the investment lowers the cost for participants by about $6,000. So that speaks to the board's questions around, what impact are we providing by bringing some financing to the table. I'm going to turn it over to Grace from Block Power. Grace, feel free to address this slide. The next couple slides are also for you to speak to.
Thank you, Becky. We have on the attendee list as well, Mark Hall from Revalue, a local developer we were introduced by through our community advisory board strategy. And he has really partnered with us to deliver an ecosystem of local businesses, local contractors that are minority and women-owned businesses. I think for many folks who are familiar with the programs offered through BayREN, through many of the local programs, we're severely constrained, frankly, by the number of folks who can do this work and who are knowledgeable and employing the folks that really bring the benefits of the new clean energy economy to a wider pool of folks. So I think Mark has single-handedly brought the most number of minority and women-owned contractors to the BayREN program. And so he can speak later to kind of the benefits of these programs for existing contractors who are employing local workers. But that ecosystem of developers, contractors, trainers, workers is who we're relying on to grow and expand the pool of projects here. Mark spends 75% of his time, he says, in educating folks. And so having that trust with the local community members through community organizations they trust, anchor institutions they can believe, that's really key in making sure that we can break through and get these projects done. That education is difficult. We're talking about heat pumps, which are not yet a familiar phrase for most folks, and hopefully campaigns like the Switch is on, more and more folks will come around to electrification. But it's also really important for folks to understand that the projects will not only help them with efficiencies, which I think most folks are on board with in concept, but more specifically for the health benefits as well. As the following slide will illustrate, the benefits to not just wealth, but health are tremendous, especially in communities that are dealing with the legacies of redlining, environmental justice, and other pollutants in our lower income communities. The third challenge that we've learned from in our pilot work this past year has been the programs that exist are individually quite good, but are really difficult to navigate. And having all of these programs, as Becky mentioned, nested into one, where we bring in all the various levers and incentives to turn about one simple payment for the entire project, that's a huge piece of the value that we're able to deliver with a program like this. So many of us know that there are good coupons out there, that are good money saving ways to live, and it's really hard to navigate all of them, stitch together all the various ways we can save money. And this is frankly one of those things that unless we can make this a turnkey proposition for most customers, it's too big, too complex, too expensive, and too challenging for many folks to take on. Next slide, please. We work very diligently to make sure that folks are aware of what they're signing on to. For all of our new community work that we do in any new market, we actually send our customer contract to our partners, have them review it independently to make sure that they can also validate that our customer contract does right by the customer. And so here in Oakland, we did have Revalue independently evaluate our contract before, because now Mark's name is on the line. He's the one who's going to have to speak for whether or not he sold customers a good deal, basically. And other community partners like the Northern California Community Land Trust and other advocates for low and moderate income communities have independently reviewed or signed and otherwise supported our contract. Beyond the contract itself, which is always longer than you'd hope, and though we have that condensed on that front page, it really does speak to the idea that we're not looking to create folks who are just kind of signing on the easy line, sign over some big contract that they don't fully understand. We want folks to fully understand that this is a deep retrofit, that there are significant improvements, that we are addressing deferred maintenance. And so as Becky mentioned, this does cost more. It'd be great if we could make this completely neutral. But again, given the extent of what we've seen so far that our projects are requiring, it's going to take a bit more capital from from the customer themselves. And I think most folks look at that as an opportunity to access financing and get a project done that they wouldn't otherwise be able to. And so that enablement capital itself has been something that's been compelling to our customers. Next slide, please. And from our small set of customers today, we have about a dozen customers hoping to secure another set more. And with EBCE's funds and support, we'll be well on our way to electrifying and remediating and delivering clean and healthy homes throughout our communities. My children enjoy pre-dinner time. We're expecting to see a lot of the values that our existing customers have shared with us reflected in the next set. It really is about health. It is about the life you can lead when you're not worried about asthma attacks, lead, mold, and asbestos. It's about addressing indoor air quality, where we spend 80 to 90% of our time, especially when outdoor air quality is atrocious. That happens seasonally for some of us. It happens year round for others who, especially in communities of color and low and moderate income communities, they're facing many more pollutants and other environmental toxins. So one of our customers gave us a lovely quote here from Mr. Gibbs on Marshall Street. And you notice he's not talking there, I'm saving so much money. He's paying, he's investing in his property. But more important than that is how much better he feels about the environmental conditions that his own children are growing up in. So I think that speaks very strongly for that. And if we have time for some comments, our partner, Mark Hall, is also on the attendee list, and he can speak to some of what our customers are telling us as well.
Madam Clerk, can we promote Mark?
Mark Hall is on the attendee list and has his hand raised. So if he gets a chance to be promoted, that's great. We can have him speak now. We could also return to him in public comment if that's the preference of the chair and the directors.
Well, let's see if we could get him in now. Lori, are you able to promote Mark Hall?
Yes, he's being promoted. I think it's just taken. Mark, are you over?
I see him on the panelist list, Chair.
Hello, hi, this is Mark. Thank you, Grace, and thank you, Becky, so much for this presentation. I'm glad to be here tonight and glad that this is on the agenda. So, just to speak to a couple of the points that Grace mentioned, we all know that there's a huge lack of diversity in contractors and folks actually doing this work. So we've been, really excited about our partnerships with the Cypress Mandela Training Center to get more folks out to actually do the work. And, as Grace mentioned, Vince Gibbs, he was one of our first customers that came through that we were able to address the energy efficiency as well as the home health hazards. And that's, a lot of what we're seeing out there. And it's why this enablement capital is so important, because, you're not able to just go in and do straight, electrification. There's quite a bit of other remediation that's usually required because, in a lot of these communities, folks just haven't been able to invest in their properties and a lot of times are not as familiar with these new technologies. So this is a really great program. I've been really excited to work with the folks at Block Power, over the last about a year and a half. And we've been really blessed actually to be able to grow through word of mouth, just because folks are really, really pleased with the work that we do. Folks like to see contractors that represent their community coming into their homes. They feel a lot more comfortable. So I'm just really, really glad to be here and here to answer any questions and continue to support. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mark. So that was the last slide and prepared comments for this item. So at this point, I will hand it back over to you, Chair Martinez.
Thank you, Becky. Colleagues, at this time, We will entertain questions from the board. Is there anyone who didn't get their questions from November answered? And we'll start with questions, then we'll take public comment, and then we will come back for deliberation. So I'll first recognize Anna Olivia Eldred.
Thank you, Chair. I wanted to say this was one of the topics that the Community Advisory Committee spent a long time last night talking on. In November, our position was one of support, and after our discussion last night, that position of support remained. The discussion primarily focused on clarifications, focused on financial impacts. This program targets low and moderate income customers. And ultimately, while there are savings on energy, this bill still increases for these customers. And we also recognize that a lot of other things in the household improve for the customers. We had a lot of discussion asking that staff seek specific considerations for protecting low income customers from bill increases, and consider options like forgivable loans, options to reduce interest rates on the loans, or other mechanisms to reduce the bills that customers pay each month, and remain in support of this project with a deep respect to the work that Mark Hall and Revalue IO are doing.
Thank you, Chair Eldred. Next up is Member Hannon from Newark.
Thank you, Madam Chair. That presupposes that I actually remember my questions from November, but thank you for giving me that credit. And I apologize, colleagues, if I ask the same question again that I may have asked in November. I have a lot of skepticism about this program, not based on its intent. I think the intent is really good, but I have a lot of concerns about it. The contractors, the trainers, all those folks that have been selected, they predominantly come from Oakland, and I saw one from Hayward. Did we put out an RFP or an RFQ to solicit contractors, trainers from throughout the Bay Area that we service?
Would you like me to address questions as they come, Chair?
Yeah, feel free, Becky. Yes.
Great. I will actually defer this one to the folks from Block Power to talk about their contractor selection process, as this is part of their program.
We're certainly looking for more contractors, especially contractors that represent the neighborhoods that we're working in. We find that it's very compelling for homeowners to see their friends and neighbors working on their homes. So this pilot was really within Oakland because that's where we started, but there's nothing keeping us from looking. In fact, we would like a broader base of contractors in every region we work in.
So do you anticipate that of the roughly 60 projects, are you anticipating that the majority of those projects will be completed in Oakland?
No, I expect it to roughly reflect what we need to reflect in the EBCE service territory. So we will strive to have a representative amount in each territory, in each city.
And to that end, Grace, did you reach out to the local communities, whether it be the community development directors or the economic development directors or the planning commissioners? Who did you reach out to in each one of the cities to solicit input from them in terms of who might be suitable for participating in this process?
I think that would have presupposed a program that was not yet authorized. So that would be very much be part of our implementation effort.
Okay, so I would certainly ask, Madam Chair, that if we move forward with this, that we do ask Block Power to make sure that they do reach out to each one of our communities to make sure that all of the communities have an opportunity to participate in what I think at the end of the day is a worthwhile program. Will EBCE be maintaining some kind of a role in terms of reviewing these contracts as they come in to make sure that we have an opportunity to at least audit them or to have a conversation with the customer who's one of our customers to make sure that they truly understand what they're making a commitment to? Will we be actively involved in that regard?
The board materials this month do include the actual agreements that we'll be executing with Block Power. And that includes provisions around quality assurance, quality control of projects, document retention, for Block Power, and the review process that we'll be undergoing is for the
And I would imagine that
incentive
EBC,
allocation process. So
I'm assuming that you said yes to that. You were breaking up, and so I'll assume you were saying yes, that EBC will remain active as this project rolls out. Will you be coming? I would hope that you'd come back to us on a periodic basis, whether or not that's quarterly, semi-annually, to give us an update as to how the project is going. And then my last comment is, if there should be a dispute between the customer realizing late in the game that they either signed up for something that they didn't anticipate, or the costs were much more than they thought they would be, what's the arbitration process look like if there should be a dispute between Block Power and ultimately what gets done on a property owner's property? That's my last question. Thank you, Madam Chair, for your patience.
Becky, I can speak to this if that's helpful. First off, part of the financing that we're providing is through a lease structure. So whereas many construction projects have a cost overrun potential, the customer is actually protected, and Block Power and Revalue are the ones that have to figure out whether the scope is done correctly from the get-go. So we bear the risk of cost overruns. From a resolution perspective, we are very much looking forward to not having this go through traditional kind of punitive measures where the bigger and more lawyered entity is kind of prevails. So we would look to community resolution, other ways to kind of resolve things before things become legal or otherwise entangled, and understanding that we operate under the aegis of a community organization like EBCE, we will make sure that we are treating especially these first 60 customers as real discovery and opportunities for us to address and learn from the communities directly. We very much look at this as the first 60 of the next 600 or 6,000. And so we are looking very much to make sure that folks understand what they're getting and are supportive of the program. As Mark said, most of our customers going forward have been referrals from the customers before. I think it really does speak to the pent-up demand for flexible enablement financing that has been the blocker for many folks moving forward.
Thank you, Grace, and thank you, Becky, for your presentation.
Very good. I see a raised hand from Mark Hall at Block Power, if he'd like to respond to anything that you've just heard.
Hi, Mark Hall with Revalue, actually. But
sorry.
I wanted to just respond to the question about contractor outreach, that process. We have been working very closely through our partner, the Cypress Mandela Training Center, with the Alameda County Workforce Investment Board, to get the word out for about the pilot opportunity, as well as some of the labor match opportunities that they have at their different sites. So that work is going to ramp up, just to sort of piggyback on what Grace was saying about sort of getting started before this program is actually official. But we have been working closely with the Workforce Investment Board.
Very good. Thank you, Mark. Seeing no other hands raised from the board, we will move to public comment. I'll check with our clerk to see if anyone has submitted electronic comment or has submitted a speaker card. Actually, put a pin in that. I just saw a raised hand from board member Teresa Cox. Do you have a question, Teresa?
Yes, I do.
Ooh, Teresa, if you're able to type your question into the chat, I'll be happy to read it aloud, or if you're able to resolve your audio issue. You want to try again? And I think you might be using a phone and another device. Is that right? Member Cox, if you are, and you wish to use the audio on your phone, you press *6 to unmute yourself. Thanks everyone for your patience. Member Cox, do you want to just give us a wave and let us know if you still want to ask your question now? Oh, here you are. You He followed my advice. So the question, I'll read it into the record. This is from Member Cox. Is there a signed MOU either with the Alameda County Building Trades Council?
Staff has not pursued a signed MOU with the Alameda Trades Council at this time. Block Power?
No, but certainly we take that as a great lead. Thank you.
Okay, so the answer is no, but they will take that into consideration. So with that, now I will turn back to our board clerk and see if anyone has submitted
Yes, I have Jessica.
Item.
I'm sorry, Jessica Tovar.
Yep. Then let's go ahead and hear from Jessica Tovar for 2 minutes, please.
Jessica,
Hi, this is Jessica Tovar, East Bay Clean Power Alliance. East Bay Clean Power Alliance supports this program for the access to electrification that we understand is very costly, and folks can use the help with that. And then also for the jobs that it will bring, especially to our local workforce that reflects the diversity of the East Bay and Tracy. We also too just want to ensure that folks who sign up for the program fully understand what they are signing on to, understanding very clearly the benefits and the trade-offs of the program, and understanding that this is also an educational opportunity, especially that electrification and energy efficiency work best together. And to add to that, even better if we are able to add local solar on top of that to power the electrification appliances, what have you. And then we have some, questions for EBCE moving forward is how do we create a program for folks who can afford even the small, bill increases moving forward, or offer something similar for those that might fall into the lowest of incomes. We recognize that this is a pilot program and we have a lot to learn about how to improve these opportunities moving forward. So we look forward to learning more about that from this project. Clean power to the people. Thank you.
Thank you, Jessica. I don't see any other hands from the public raised, so I will turn back to staff and see if they would like to attempt to answer that question about possibly creating a program for folks who cannot bear the increased bill, either with this program or with the future program where we would be targeting those very low income folks.
I'm happy to address those questions. Program of interest is the fact that the tech program will be rolling out a pilot. And I know my interconnection is unstable. So if I freeze or get weird, maybe raise a hand and let me know. So the tech program will be rolling out a pilot focused on qualified customers at the 80% AMI level or below. That program will seek to close the gap between what that program, the ESAP program, provides currently and the cost of electrification measures. So that should expand access for lower income customers. And we're interested to see how far that goes, what the limitations are. Another program that is on the horizon at the state level is a tariff on-bill financing mechanism. We're tracking PG&E proposals and other program proposals. This program may be a very good fit, particularly for renter populations and for lower income individuals. It allows transferability with the property. So if a tenant moves out, they do not retain responsibility for payment of the financing that would carry with the home. The other nice thing about that program, the current proposal is that it be bill neutral. So there not be an increase in cost to the building occupant for participation. So those are near-term programs on the horizon that may give us at EBCE an opportunity to leverage those programs to sweeten the deal or expand access. So those are what we're tracking in the short term for our lower income customers.
I also just want to note to that point that while this program is focused on single family homes, Block Power's origins are in working with housing authorities. or significantly with working as housing authorities. And so as we think about delivering these benefits to our lowest income customers, it's not necessarily going to be a matter of recruiting individual customers to into a program. It's going to be probably more a function of being able to partner with housing in Oakland, the Oakland Housing Authority, or owners of income qualified housing across Alameda County. So part of what we're trying to do is build some experience with Block Power and understand this segment, so that as we have the ability, whether with Block Power or others, to address that segment as incentives become available to pursue those kinds of projects.
Very good. So board, we will bring it back to the board for discussion at this time. Chair Eldred, do you have your hand raised as from last time, or would you like to kick us off on our conversation?
No, I guess I wanted to kick it off.
Go ahead, you have the floor.
Thanks so much. So we listened to this presentation last night, and I was really doing a lot of thinking about myself, because I'm one of the, I don't own a home, but I was like, okay, the bill goes up, but you get all these other improvements. And I started thinking about what our life was like when the smoke was really bad. And I have like kind of a slumlord. I might be generous with the kind of, and we have energy efficiency windows installed, but they're installed incorrectly. So like wind will go through them because they're shimmed in with just plastic coverings instead of actually being put in correctly and all that kind of stuff. And if I could improve the air quality inside of my house, and I could, do the energy efficiency things and pay that off at $57 a month or whatever the average was, instead of $35,000 at a time, I would be thrilled. And so even though that bill does go up from a personal perspective, and I'm not speaking for the CAC right now, but like from a personal perspective, if I could pay that off at $57 a month, and it was less drafty and less smoky and less moldy and less all of those things in my house, I would do that in a second. And it's not something that is available to me as a person, because I don't have $35,000 to make those kinds of upgrades to my home, but I could do $57 a month. And that is something that I trust Mark, because I've seen how he talks, and I've seen how he interacts, and I've seen his integrity in how he interacts with the world. And he always puts folks before his own interests, always. And so like that gave me a lot of confidence. And last night, the presentation that Becky gave was really clear. Electric bill itself will go down because these efficiencies are there. The monthly cost will go up a little bit. And then I started thinking, God, I would make that investment. And so the thing that's before us is like, do you want to fund a pilot? And part of that pilot is actually an investment that we're making a 5.5% return on. And the other part is a grant program that we want anyways to help low-income folks. And that's just one of the things that we do. So I guess that's where I'm coming from. And they gave us a lot of research on like, we check with people to make sure this isn't going to harm them, that they can afford it. And one of the other things that I heard last night that I did not hear tonight was that there's been a request that Block Power come back in 6 months with a concept of what it would take to let renters and other people who can't participate in this project participate. And that was really exciting to me. So I guess that's not really a question, but when I really sat with this, I really liked the concept of this sort of investment, making these quality of life and health improvements accessible to people who don't always have it accessible to them. And that's all.
Very good, thank you. Next up, we have Vice Chair Lopez.
Thank you very much. I have a question regarding the effective interest rate. Before I actually make my comment, can you just clarify why the rate would be at approximately 6.5%? I received a comment yesterday from a member of the CAC who has expressed interest in understanding why it's this high. And I just wanted that information to be explained out there to the public as to why it's this rate.
I actually think that this question has come up enough that
It's actually directed for Nick Chaska.
Yeah. I mean,
Thank you.
absolutely. But, I would probably sort of, touch on Grace. I would, what I would say is this was a friendly negotiation. This was not, I think Block Power and EVCE grinding out over, 50 basis points of interest. I think what we kind of arrived at and why I think this 5.5% is the effective rate of the note is that represents a meaningfully lower rate in a sort of second position that we sit in than the market would provide. And, 2-3+%. I won't speak to the specific percent because I'm not privy to, the conversations that Block Power is having with other lenders. But, we have ground tested that as well when we think about sort of consumer energy unsecured consumer energy efficiency, which is essentially what this is. Very often, you're seeing rates north of 10% for that. So, I think we arrived at 5.5 because we felt like that from a risk-adjusted perspective reflected a fair return for us that provides a really meaningful benefit to our customers. There's no, could it have been 5? Could it have been 6? There's not a playbook here for us around what the rate should be.
So basically what you've explained to me offline and what you're explaining this evening is that this is actually a relatively lower rate than the market rate.
Correct. Yes, it is. Yeah. This is I would say meaningfully lower rate than market.
Thank you. And then also, if you can just talk a little bit about the concept of reinvesting funds and so forth back into the community, as opposed to just doing, outright grants and so forth. Nick.
Yeah. So, I think, again, when we think about our local development budget and how we want to allocate those funds, certainly some amount of those dollars, will always go out as incentives and grants. But, we are capital constrained. We can only, spend so much in any given year on the things that we really want to spend more money on, which is more local clean energy, more local job creation, more local environmental benefits. And, we believe that finding pathways that create, returns on our investments are going to allow us to do that. So in this particular case, $1 million investment over, it's a 10-year note, I believe, at 5.5% is going to generate, $55,000 a year in interest income for EVCE. And then it's going to obviously return the principal as well. So that's $155,000 a year that EVCE is going to have and be able to reinvest in more local development. And, I think one of the things we're excited about this opportunity is demonstrating that this pathway works. Are there other things we can be doing to create leverage?
Thank you for addressing my questions.
Great, thank you, Vice Chair. Next up, we have Member Hannon.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Just a couple of requests of my colleagues. When this item is voted on, I would again ask that we ask that staff and Block Power make contact with each one of our local jurisdictions to make sure that our local jurisdictions are aware of this program and have an opportunity to participate. And then secondly, as to Nick's comment regarding the Oakland Housing Authority, I would ask that staff also reach out to the Alameda County Housing Authority and make the same presentation to them so that they understand that there's opportunities for some of those landlords as well. And then my last comment, Ann Olivia, you definitely do have a slum landlord. Sorry about that.
Thank you, Member Hannon. And seeing no other comments, Member Hannon, you're invited to make a motion encapsulating all of your requests.
Great. I do support this. Certainly anything that we can do to improve the quality of life of our residents is certainly admirable. So I'm going to certainly make a motion that we support this proposal moving forward with the addition that we ask the EBCE staff to reach out to each one of our local jurisdictions and make sure that they're aware of this program and that they have an opportunity to participate either in encouraging contractors to contact Block Power to make themselves available, or in any other means that furthers this program along. And then secondly, I would ask that staff and Block Power also reach out to the Alameda County Housing Authority and make a similar presentation there as well. So that would be my motion.
Very good. I think those are great recommendations. Is there a second, colleagues?
I'll second it. This is Dan.
Second.
Great. Couple seconds. We have a motion from Member Hannon and a second from Member Kalb. And Lori, when you're ready, please call the roll.
Thank you. City of Albany,
Yes.
City of Livermore,
Yes.
City of Piedmont,
Yes.
City of San Leandro,
Aye.
City of Tracy,
Yes.
City of Oakland,
Aye.
City of Emeryville,
Aye.
City of Hayward,
Aye.
Union City.
Aye.
I had some competing something on there.
Yeah, Member Narum, I think that was your background. Thank you for muting.
City of Berkeley. City of Berkeley. They're absent. City of Pleasanton.
Aye.
City of Fremont. City of Fremont.
Aye.
Thank you. City of Dublin. They're absent, I'm sorry. City of Newark,
Aye.
City or County of Alameda. County of Alameda. They have left the meeting. By those in attendance, it's passed by a majority vote or by unanimous vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. I'm very excited about this program, by the way. I can't wait to see what the results are. And next up, we have our mid-year budget review. So I will go ahead and mute myself and cede the floor to staff for a presentation. Hi, Jake.
Hi, how are you? I believe, Lori, do you have the memo available in the attachment? If not, I can screen share.
Yes, I think it's coming up right now.
Okay, great. Excellent. Thank you. If we could
Do you want it down farther?
scroll up, please. Great. This is a good place to start. So this is an information item regarding a comparison between the budget that was passed in June of 2021 with some updates as they have occurred through actuals through November 30th of 2021 with some estimates for December and the first half of 2022. There is an attachment to this memo that has a table summary that we will look at as well. If you could scroll down, please, Lori. Thank you. So I'll start on some highlights. Revenues are up. This is about 7.9% above budgeted expected amounts. And this is primarily due to the CPUC approving higher rates in 2022 and reducing the PCIA that we were estimating at the time of budget development. There are some assumptions around uncollectibles and arrearages. Due to COVID, we did increase this estimate to 2.5%. We are now seeing reasons to decrease as uncollectible amounts are diminishing, and this is as a percentage of revenue. So this is still in line with our estimated amounts at the time of budget, which is 2% for the second half of 2021 and 1.5% for the first half of 2022, which covers the fiscal year. Thank you very much. Thank you, Lori. And so this is a chart that compares what our monthly budgeted revenues were expected to be at the time of budget development. And the red is our actuals through November, and then updated estimates moving forward. We see that in the first half of the year, the actuals have been coming in less than expected. This is primarily due to more temperate weather. And then we see a large increase in the second half, and that is, as I said, due to the higher PG&E rates and lower PCIA that we will be experiencing. If you could scroll down, please. Thank you, Lori. So our largest cost item is energy, and we are seeing an increase in energy rates, about 3.5% above budgeted estimate, and this is due to higher than expected prices. We are in a rising price environment, and so that has led to the increase in rates that we're seeing now. And we are instituting, or we have instituted a prepay agreement that begins this month. And so we are expecting to see $2 million in cost reductions through the first half of 2022 due to that prepay agreement. If we can continue to scroll down. Operational overhead is below budgeted amounts, and this is primarily due to staffing costs. Certain positions have not yet been filled. Labor has been an issue, but we did, as Nick has noted earlier, we have made some new hires, and so we are filling those roles. It's just taking a little bit more of time, but that has led to lower than budgeted amounts in our spending for overhead. In non-operating position, this is a variety of cost items and revenue sources, such as interest on our cash balances that we hold at RCD. Again, these are not an investment of any kind. It's just a interest that we return like a savings account. That has been, so the revenues on that have come in a little bit less than expected. We were budgeting 0.4%. We're coming in at about 0.25. But the big item here, of course, is a capital expenditure with the purchase of the new building. The refinancing that we are planning will not be reflected in this amount, but will be seen as, will eventually be reflected in this amount, but is yet to be seen as to when that timing will occur. It may be in the next fiscal year. So then, in terms of net position, overall, we're going to end substantially above our estimates, and this is again primarily due to the revenue stream, as you can see, with the lower PCIA costs and higher rates in 2022, and we will see that start to really come into effect in March of this year with March bills. Please continue to scroll down. So if we could go to the table, and if we could maybe, yeah, there we go. This is the side-by-side comparison of budgets and actuals with a differential and a percentage. So as we see, electricity sales are up. Our uncollectible amounts, as I discussed, are at those percentage of sales. And so that leads to an overall increase in operating revenue of electricity sales of 7.9%, but we've realized some additional small revenues that bump it up to 8%. In terms of energy costs, we can see that they have gone up by 3.8%, but some contractual agreements that we've renegotiated through the year have come in a little bit lower with our data manager, and with the lower with fewer. We have slightly fewer accounts than we were expecting at this point, so there's also slightly less metering charges. Again, that amount is not a very substantial amount, but it's just enough for variance. And then with energy and operation, if we scroll down to overhead, we can see that the largest numerical or absolute value is with the personnel costs, the reduction of personnel costs, which, as I said, has been due to the delay of hiring. And then we have non-operating revenues below, which the reduction is due to interest income. And then if we could scroll down a little bit more, we'll see that there was an increase in capital expenditures. Now, I'd like to draw attention to the local development funding line item to state that this is a transfer of funds. So it's transferring from our general fund, which is being presented here, to our local development fund. So that's why there's no difference there. This total dollar amount is expected to be spent. It may not be spent within this year, but that's would be represented in a different fund balance. And so that gives us to our total net increase and decrease in position of we're estimating somewhere, in the high 30s, which is, substantially above our initial budget that we proposed in June. And that is, as I will reiterate again, primarily driven by the increase in revenues due to higher rates in 2022 and lower PCIe costs in 2022. And that's it. I'm open for questions.
Great, thank you, Jason. Colleagues will be taking questions, clarifying questions at this time. Does anyone have any questions for staff on this mid-year budget review? Okay, seeing no hands raised, I will check in with our clerk, Lori, to see if anyone has submitted public comment on this or has submitted a speaker card on this item.
No, I have no speaker cards. Anybody wishing to speak in the audience? I see no.
If you're joining us by Zoom, use the raise hand feature. If you're calling in, press *9 to raise your hand in the app. And I see no raised hands. So we'll go ahead and close public comment and bring this back to the board. Colleagues, is there any discussion on this item? This is an information item, so we're not being asked to take an action. We're simply receiving the report. First up, Anna Olivia Eldred, you were recognized.
Thanks. Sorry, I'm talking so much tonight, but this was the other item the CAC talked about, and there is a statement from the CAC in the annotated agenda that you received. I just wanted to point out that thank you for the report. As we are looking at a time where financially we are looking pretty good right now, the CAC recommends that EBCE takes a look again at funding the community innovation grants. We thank Nick Tassett for speaking about that, but really that Ed Hernandez and Jane Frank, Ed used to sit on this body and Jane was vice chair for the last 2 years. We're part of the selection committee and spoke really highly of the impact the community innovation grants have. Following staff's advice, I went back and listened to the meeting. It's a confusing meeting, but it is also clear that this body wanted those grants funded. So just ask that we take a real look at doing that again. And that's all.
Great, thank you. Colleagues, seeing no other hands raised, we will accept this report. Thank you, staff, for putting it together, and we will move on to item 13. This is the credit rating review.
Great. I'll be presenting on this item. Lori, if you can pull up the memo for item 13, that would be helpful. And while she's doing that, this is an informational item. This is a review of our credit rating status and the outcome of an assessment from S&P, and the results of which were made public in December via press release, and also shared with the board then.
Item 13.
Correct. Great. If you could scroll down a little bit to the background and discussion section, that would be great.
There we go.
Yeah, perfect. If you can just, go a little lower, that's great. This report will be relatively short. As an attachment to this, the actual full credit rating evaluation report from S&P was included. So we're just sharing a few snippets here. We're obviously excited and proud of the outcome here. And just wanted to share a brief summary of that with the board. A very brief, I guess, disclaimer or caveat is that contractually, when we speak about details from the credit rating report itself, we are not allowed to take it out of context. So we really are supposed to share both strengths and weaknesses and share the report when we share details on it. So just as sort of a side note. The rating, obviously the punchline here is that we received an single A stable credit rating by S&P Global. We received that, and that was made public on December 9th. The details of which I'll highlight some of the strengths and some of the challenges that they noted in the report itself. And then I want to talk a little bit about the information that we actually presented to S&P to, of course, receive this rating. And specifically, that information is more tied directly to some of our financial metrics and forecasts. Some of the strengths here I think will be fairly obvious. We have a deep customer base of about 640,000 customer accounts. Roughly half of that is residential. And importantly, we had less than a 5% opt-out rate. So that, of course, shows strong community support of the value proposition. We have a protective JPA agreement with our members, diverse power supply arrangements, solid financial performance with an expectation of more liquidity in the coming years, and limited direct exposure to local wildfire hazards. Scrolling down, if you could scroll down just a little bit here, the next few bullets are sort of highlighting some of the challenges that S&P noted. Direct retail competition with PG&E, volatile load profile, and a need to fulfill our renewable energy balancing mandates, exposure to PCIA, some open exposure to the market based off of our open hedge position, and that we're still developing reserves in a marginally tight year of operations. The conclusions of the report were really based off of a lengthy presentation that we provided to S&P on October 22nd, 2021. So really focused on fiscal year end results as of June 2021. And we included, of course, financial projections. Part of the process, they require a 5-year forecast. And so if you can scroll down a little bit lower there, this is a bit of an eye chart. So if you can maybe even enlarge it a little bit, I think that would be helpful. I will certainly not go through every number here. What I'll highlight is, of course, this table is set up in the gray shaded area. That's historical financials. We've, of course, covered those in the past. And then the non-shaded area is our forecast, our 5-year forecast. Certainly, there's no forecast out there that will be accurate. We all know it's really challenging to forecast rates, energy prices, PCIA. So we look at things from a fairly stable perspective and project them forward. But we all acknowledge, certainly S&P acknowledges, there is expected volatility in energy markets that will inevitably change this, but gives a sense of how things are forecasted. I will go primarily to the bottom section of that. So if you can actually scroll a little lower, Lori, I'm going to focus mostly on the net position and the days liquidity here. And so that was the, probably the biggest factor that S&P really looks at is our liquidity and our ability to sort of weather risks, based off of energy market volatility, customer behaviors, et cetera. So the net position is in this kind of last section, and we're showing a change in net position here in that first row there of the net position section. The big focus point was really the bottom line there, which is the total net position with the GASB 62 balance. And again, the GASB 62 is that revenue deferral fund that we've talked about, of course, in the past. So we add up our cumulative net position since the beginning of operations plus our GASB, and that's what that line item total net position with GASB 62 balance reflects. So actuals, that last number in the gray column is a little over $187 million. And you can see that projected forward increases pretty steadily in the $200 to $300 million range as you get into the later periods of that 5-year forecast. That number then translates to a day's liquidity on hand and an adjusted days liquidity on hand number. The important thing that I'll highlight here is that typically days liquidity on hand is really a reflection of your cash balances, which is the critical metric that credit rating agencies are evaluating. This number is a proxy, right? So we're doing our days liquidity on hand calculation based off of our total net position with GASB 62. And what I mean by that is that that line item, the GASB, the $212 million as an example for this budgeted fiscal year, that is not a cash number, that is our net position number. A portion of that actually converts to cash, not all of it. It's extremely difficult to project your cash balance exactly, to know exactly when payments will come in from customers month to month. And so for that reason, we took a simple approach and really just look at net position. And that's commonly done with S&P, sort of acceptable. They make certain assumptions around that for cash basis, but that number is not truly our days liquidity. I want to be clear about that, but it's a pretty good proxy, of course, of where it is. So our actual days liquidity is a little lower than that 137 number if you really look at cash. And the adjusted days liquidity on hand, that reflects the additional liquidity we have through our credit facility with Barclays Bank. So those line items are really the critical line items they look at from a financial perspective. And obviously, as you can see, it reflects an increasing growth and balance in the coming years, which was important for S&P to see. Despite us having fairly strong balance sheet and good financial performance, they really want to see that continuing to increase. We are a large entity. We have a lot of energy costs that we have to absorb. So despite that being a pretty big number, we want to see that number continually increase. And that's what the basis of that single A rating is assuming, is that we do continue to accumulate cash and liquidity. Laura, you can zoom out a little bit now and keep on scrolling, please. And you can go to that next graph. This graph kind of just shows the numbers that we just talked about in a little bit more of an illustrative, digestible way. So I would say the two big things I'll highlight here are the yellow line and the red line. And that really shows our balance or our reserve percent coverage and our net position coverage. That's a percentage of our expenses. And so we want to see that obviously increase, and that would reflect improved liquidity to cover our expenses. If you scroll down a little bit further, just as a refresher, our current reserve policy, go up a little bit, Lori, just touching on the second half of this page. Our current reserve policy targets 50% reserve balance with a range of 25 to 75%. And the one thing I'll highlight is, also as clarification, our reserve balance is not exactly equivalent to our cash balance. So we take a subset of our cash balance and we put it into reserves. Reserves really intended not to be touched. So really for sort of dire circumstances where you would need to tap into your reserves, and that would require board action for us to do that. I think I've touched on most of the, the fact that we have a facility size of $80 million and $60 million is cash, so that adds in additional liquidity for us. Then really just the last point here is, as we presented to S&P, we did speak about some additional working capital improvements related to our financing for our building, as well as planned solicitation that we have for later this year, where we want to go back out to market for our credit facility and potentially increase that size, especially as we've grown as an entity, increased our load. That is something we'll likely look to do. So we touch on those things with S&P. But with that, that's just a short summary of it. And again, the full report is attached.
Great, thank you, Howard. Colleagues, do we have any questions for staff on this report? Member Hannon.
Nick, thanks for the report and excellent credit rating. Just a couple of real quick, simple questions. How often do they look at our financial situation and update our credit rating?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we pay a fee on an annual basis for them to continuously monitor us, basically. So they will check in with us annually to understand if there are any material events that we need to communicate. And we certainly have some contractual obligations to proactively, share that information with them. The big ones are, certainly related to anything with debt. So if we were to start drawing debt, if we were to issue debt, that's information that they would need to take into account. Any form of leverage is something that they find as very material when you're looking at credit evaluation. So there's a combination of us proactively reaching out and them sort of monitoring us on a regular basis.
Well, again, considering how young our agency is, a credit rating is outstanding. So congratulations. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Member Hannon. Any other clarifying questions? That was a great one, by the way. I see no other questions here. I will check with the clerk to see if anyone has submitted public comment electronically, or whether there are any attendees with a raised hand. And folks joining us from home, just use the raise hand feature in Zoom to be recognized, or if you're calling in, press *9. Lori, do you have any electronic comments?
I'm sorry. There is no electronic comments. That's what I was trying to say. I'm sorry, I was on mute.
No problem. And I don't see anyone with their hands raised.
And I don't see any hands.
Very good. So we'll go ahead and close public comment and bring it back. Is there any discussion from the board? Does anyone wish to weigh in on this? I too will just extend my congratulations to staff. This is an early goal of the board from the inception of this agency, and this is a direction we've been headed in, and it is remarkable. I will say that not only where we're at today, but those projections, I expect us to have an even better rating in the coming years. So kudos to staff, and we're going to be able to leverage this rating into more great projects and investments into our communities. So well done. That will go ahead and move us next to an action item. This is item 14. This item is to authorize the CEO to negotiate and execute a contract with FEC Nevada. And I will go ahead and turn it over to staff for the presentation.
I'll be presenting on this item, and Lori, if you agree, great, perfect. So if you can go to the next slide, please.
Oops.
Yeah, perfect. So this is a slide that this is an action item. We are seeking approval to complete negotiations and execution of a geothermal project. This is just an overview slide that we've shared now a number of times, just sort of covering how we approach long-term power procurement solicitations, some of the goals that we have laid out for this specific solicitation that we actually issued back in 2020. So this is at the end of 2020. We've brought forward, as a reminder, a number of contracts that came through from that solicitation in 2021. We have closed out just about all of those negotiations at this stage, and this is one additional project that we are bringing forward that was submitted into that RFO. And I'll touch on a little bit more as to why that is. But again, this is just a solicitation overview page that we've covered a few times now, so I'm not going to spend too much time on that and sort of what we sort of sought in the broader solicitation. But it was a fairly broad solicitation that looked at new builds for a number of years and a number of different energy products. But with that, let's go to the next slide. Great. And this was just, again, a slide that you've all seen before, but a little bit on the participation of that RFO. It was fairly robust in terms of the offerings that we saw, over 70 unique project sites, over 400 contract variations. We solicited 6 different energy products, and technology-wise, you can see there we saw solar, wind, geothermal, hydro, and storage. Today we are primarily just talking about geothermal, and we did look at projects across different states, predominantly in California. This particular project is based in Nevada. Next slide, please. Once again, this is the last slide, sort of stock slide that we've seen now a few different times, but just again, a summary of the evaluation process that we utilized when we reviewed all of the various submissions that came into this RFO. We look at 3 primary areas, the counterparty execution, offer competitiveness, which is mostly finance and economics focus, and then project development status. So understanding what the permitting is, the environmental impacts, interconnection status, those types of things. For every project, we had 2 reviewers. And then we do we look at both a markup of the term sheet, so looking at contractual red lines, and then we look at an NPV and a net present value economic valuation that we complete for each of the projects. Next slide. Now we're getting to the new information. So specifically on this project, this is approval that we're seeking for a fixed price shaped energy RPS power purchase agreement. It was submitted into our RFO as already noted. It's specifically a geothermal project that is sited in Nevada, and the contract is for a 15-year term with an option to extend to 20 years. So an option to extend an additional 5 years. And it's structured as a fixed price energy agreement, which is for the similar to most of our long-term PPAs. The developer is Fervo Energy, and it's expected to be operational in May of 2026. So it is one of, if not the latest COD that we have. And what's really critical here is this last sub-bullet, and that is that this project will help us meet a CPUC mandate for long lead time resources. And you can, of course, see that the CPUC code specifically there. So this specific mandate came in the midterm reliability issuance, and it specifically calls for a high capacity factor, zero emissions project. So 80% capacity factor, zero emissions project, which is basically a very limited pool of technology that can meet that requirement. That's basically geothermal and biomass. And that mandate was actually released after our RFO went out there, but we, certainly we're aware of that expectation. And so I think we felt that it was most favorable to make sure to go back to our RFO, look at the offers, see what was competitive, certainly evaluate what was fairly limited offerings in the geothermal and biomass sort of space. There's not a lot of projects of that nature, either in California or outside of California for that matter, and felt that this was a very competitive project that would allow us to meet this requirement. And so we are trying to move quickly now to get this under contract so we can really lock it up and secure it, given a bit of scarcity in project development of this type. So that's great, perfect. So the project, just a little bit more detail about it. It's a 40 megawatt geothermal project that is based in Churchill County, Nevada. The total project size is anticipated to be about 115 megawatts, though we are doing the first phase. So I think 40 megawatts is the entirety of the phase that we're pursuing. Again, it's a 15-year contract with an option to extend to 20 years. I would say that option is definitely noteworthy. Most contracts do not have that option. Certainly most of our contracts don't have that option. So that was a nice addition to be able to negotiate here. Again, expected COD date is May 1, 2026. I would say certainly all projects always have some risk that the COD could push out. This one in particular, I would say has a bit more risk, just nature of geothermal development and what is necessary to get this sort of economic and viable for construction makes it a little bit more susceptible to delays. It does have an executed facility study and a system interconnection agreement study. So, from a project risk perspective, I think it is, within the kind of the normal risk level that we see in some of our other projects, despite it having a later COD. And like our other projects, they've made a commitment to invest into our community investment fund as part of this contract. They're committed toward utilizing union labor where possible in prevailing wages in Nevada. And that's certainly something I'll just highlight. It being outside of Nevada and this being fairly specialized in terms of drilling geothermal wells, they've made it clear, some of that skill set is fairly limited. And so they'll have to make sure that, union labor can apply. And so that's something I want to note there. And then, last thing is just the contracting entity specifically here. These are all done through project codes. This one is called FEC Nevada 1 LLC. Next, a little bit more about Fervo as a company. They are a developer specifically of geothermal, a fairly young company. They were founded in 2017, but they are comprised of a number of geothermal related sort of experts that have prior experience. That includes reservoir engineers, geophysicists, data scientists, renewable power developers, etc. This specific project and technology has combined advanced drilling techniques, fiber optic sensing, cloud-based analytics to unlock new geothermal resources. And I think that's key just because, as I noted already, there's a scarcity of available geothermal projects in California or near California. And so in order to get high capacity factor projects, which is something that the state of California needs as we transition to renewables, it is critical that we look for new sources of geothermal and look at new developing technologies to enable that. And I highlight this in part because this is specifically under the CPUC mandate related to long lead time resources. So the CPUC fully acknowledges there is some development technology risk with which they would, they look at a longer lead time need in order to develop a project like this. I think last bullet there, actually on the last slide, just a note that the personnel there themselves do have experience developing over 1 gigawatt of other generating geothermal projects, even though it's not under the Fervo team name. Next slide there. And this is just a snapshot of our current RPS portfolio. So these are all contracted projects that we have through our first 2 RFOs. There is actually one project missing here. I think it was just a miss on our part. There's an additional 50 megawatts with Clearway Energy for a project called Daggett South. But this is fairly representative. And at this stage, all of these contracts are fully negotiated and executed. If you include the 50 additional megawatts, which is also negotiated and executed, we have over 800 megawatts of renewable energy capacity that we've contracted since our inception. So a big number, we're proud of that, of course. It includes solar plus storage here on this list. It does not include any of the standalone storage that we've sold, since this is just a summary of our actual RPS generating resources. So we also have other long-term standalone storage contracts as well. And then last slide, one more. Just a few notes on next steps. We are looking to complete the negotiations here. We're in the midst of those right now, obviously seeking board approval for that reason, and targeting an execution of the contract by early February. So just over the next few weeks. There are a number of financing and permitting milestones that are just ahead of us. And then related to this and the CPUC requirement is a informational filing that we need to provide on status of all of the various requirements, this being one of them, and that is due by August 1, 2022. And we are anticipating an additional RFO to release for certain resources related to those requirements, but also additional ones to meet our own RPS obligations. That's likely going to come sometime in Q1 of 2022. So we are about to initiate our third RFO shortly. And that is it for this presentation.
Thank you, Howard. Colleagues will entertain any questions from the board at this time. Anyone got anything? I have a question. I didn't find it in the packet. What is the definition of capacity factor?
Capacity factor speaks to how much energy generation you get based off the capacity of the project. And so a couple examples, like solar has a capacity factor in the 20% range. Wind has a capacity factor, can range a bit more widely in the 30–40% range. Geothermal in the 80% range. A natural gas plant gets close to 100% capacity factor. If you want it, you can turn it on, it runs. Geothermal is very high, it almost always runs, but it's not quite all the time. And solar, obviously much lower, sun only shines a certain number of hours throughout the year.
Very good. And then my second question has more to do with the market for geothermal. Do you anticipate that we will have more experienced operators who are willing to make the investments into geothermal? I had wondered when we had when we had procured electricity in the past, why we hadn't received more applications with geothermal. But is the market changing?
I think we'll see more geothermal development, and obviously it's a lot of speculation and forecast as to what I'm speaking to now. It's hard to predict, of course. I think the CPUC mandate certainly helps to push that market forward, where otherwise a lot of the pricing you see for geothermal typically is more expensive than certainly other renewable technologies that we see in the market right now, but also more expensive than sort of prevailing energy prices in the market. So there is a regulatory push there to mandate more geothermal. And I think there is a very, very reasonable expectation that our grid needs it. As natural gas units retire, as Diablo Canyon retires, we have we will have dwindling high capacity resources. And that will just make it more and more challenging for renewable resources to have generally low capacity factors to meet all of our energy needs 24/7 as we continue to transition to more and more renewables. So I think necessity will also certainly expand geothermal. I think the regulatory requirement for it is a push to do it because it is such a long lead resource that you can't wait until the need is really there before you put these projects online. And so the developing technologies will get more and more sites that are available and that weren't viable before, but are now viable, in order to be able to develop. How limited that will ultimately be is really the challenge and what it's hard to forecast, of course.
Yeah, I'm definitely interested to see how much we can produce and how much cost can be driven down in the long term. Anna Olivia Eldred, you have the floor.
Thank you, Howard. I had a question about the geothermal resources in California. We have a number of geothermal plants that are built and shuttered at the moment because people don't want to buy 24 hours of geothermal because it's, like you said, more expensive. Has there been any look at utilizing existing California geothermal resources as opposed to creating out-of-state?
Yeah, I'll note that there's not a lot of shuttered geothermal out there. There is existing geothermal out there. This mandate is specifically for new build geothermal. So it is a requirement that it be a new project. So some of the old stuff that is currently operating would not satisfy this requirement. With that said, I would assume there probably are some shuttered geothermal projects. I'm not fully aware of exactly what capacity is available for that purpose to try to bring back online. I know that some of that was proposed into our RFO. I think there's other risk factors There's, obviously we looked at cost and timing implications. So some of that may not have met our specific needs. But it is, generally speaking, I would say there's limited capacity that is shuttered at this stage.
Perfect. The requirement for it to be new was really helpful. Thank you.
Right, we have Member Cox.
It's great to see all of you now. And thank you for being so patient with my technical difficulties there. I did have a question in terms of why this supplier, in terms of how did that compare to other suppliers that I assume you went out on an RFP, correct?
That's right.
And some of these market trends, was this one of the ones, I mean, I know you had indicated some of the characteristics and the things that made it more attractive to propose this supplier, but I'm trying to understand what was some, top 3 prevailing qualities that just stood out, or where was the technology? Did that match our vision? I'm trying to understand why this particular, and I'm not familiar with shuttered geothermal versus non-shuttered geothermal. So if there's some part you can add that little piece in there too to help me understand kind of the definition of that part, but then also what led you to select them over other
Sure. Absolutely.
other providers.
Definitionally shutter, what I'm just speaking to is projects that were previously operating and existing that are no longer operating. So shuttered as in closed down, no longer operational.
Sunset. That's
sunset,
what
exactly. And so
okay.
maybe
Thank
there's
you.
still a project there that you can upgrade and then get running again, as there obviously is a useful life for some of these projects. Generally speaking, good viable geothermal sites though do continue to operate, and certainly there may be more opportunity to bring old shutter projects back online as we continue to develop new technologies and make old sites that were perhaps no longer viable to be viable. But that's sort of more of the answering your sort of general question as to what a shutter project is. In terms of why we selected this project, I noted this a little bit before, but there was very, very few options to choose from. And I think that's why we are eager to move quickly to lock up this project in order to be able to meet our mandate. I think I have a general expectation that not all load serving entities will be able to meet this mandate. There is a significant risk of that, I should say. For those that can meet it, if you're not able to get a project contracted quickly, you may be contracting a biomass project as an example. Biomass projects are generally much more expensive, even more expensive than geothermal projects. So our desire to move forward on this particular project with this particular developer is based off of limited proposals that we saw related to geothermal. This was the best project from a price perspective, from a project development risk perspective, and from a lower risk in terms of experience and development capabilities of the developer itself, Fervo.
Okay. And is it one of the few that also had a relationship with labor? Was that also something that made it very attractive for this part, or are they all kind of across the board?
I don't think there was any significant differentiation as it relates to labor itself.
And are you using local businesses, local preference there, as well as part of the selection process?
So this is a Nevada-based project.
Okay.
And so it is just, I want to be
Yes.
clear about that, it's not a California-based project. Their commitment is to utilize union labor where possible. And they were very clear about the sort of unique labor and skills associated with drilling geothermal wells is a bit different than what you might see with, say, a solar project, where it's more traditional electricians, where there are certainly more union shops that would be available to serve that type of a need. Whereas drilling a geothermal well, there's generally very few geothermal projects out there, so the type of skilled labor that you have to do that type of work is fairly limited, and so they were clear to ensure that they're not bound to go seek necessarily go seek labor, union labor for that type of highly specialized skill set.
Got it. Okay. And how long will it take to bring this project on? I'm so sorry. I was in between, switching between devices here and I didn't think I caught that.
Sure. Yeah. The anticipated COD is May of 2026. So over 4 years out from now. And I did note that there is some risk that project, that timeframe could continue to delay.
Yeah, there's a lot of, I'm concerned, I guess also, it sounds very aggressive and I from working in supply chain, it seems like there's a lot of things that are anticipation of longer lead times than anticipated with implementing a project of this magnitude. The other part I was curious to find out, was there any like cost savings or things that will, once it's up and running, will there be some things that will be able to reduce the cost over time, not just but for our customers? I'm looking at, that sort of thing. Is there things that were negotiated that are part of those terms and conditions?
Are you speaking to like cost savings related to the operations of this facility over?
Yeah, for the operations of facility, and then them turning around to be able, if anyone has signed up and takes advantage, as you offer through East Bay Community Energy, these different products, eventually that there would be some potential cost savings passed on to the customers.
So I would say, like all of our power procurement contracts, we're not looking at from a per customer segment basis. We're looking at managing our overall load and needs. And so when we look at geothermal, we look at solar, we look at wind, we look at the various contracts that we have in place, we're looking at a projection of our load over the course of the next 20 years, which is in and of itself a very difficult process to forecast. But of course you do that. And then you look at your load shape and you look at the variety of resources that can best meet those load shapes. We don't earmark any particular resources for a particular customer. And we don't look at, a project and say, this may be a better priced project relative to the market. And so we're going to pass that on to a customer. We look at all on an aggregate basis to look at our energy costs as a whole, to serve our load as a whole. And of course, we can revisit our value proposition in terms of how we charge our customers and set our rates, but we don't sort of individualize project to customers. If that makes sense.
I see what you're saying. It's about as a whole. And
yeah, exactly. And the pricing, to your point of, are there cost savings to be had? That is all negotiated within the context of the PPA price itself. So we are negotiating a fixed price on this particular asset for the duration of the contract, which in this case is 15 years with an option to extend to 20.
Okay, thank you. That's a big point, that it's a fixed cost and not a variable and associated. So thank you so much for asking and for answering my questions and for your presentation. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Cox. I saw a hand up for a second, but then it went down. So I will check in with our clerk to see if anyone has submitted electronic comments or an electronic speaker card.
I've received no electronic information and I see no hands raised.
And seeing no hands raised from the public, we will go ahead and close public comment and we'll bring it back to the board for deliberation. Member Hannon.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Outstanding job, Howard. It always seems like you're one step ahead of every other CCA when it comes to power procurement. So congratulations in that regard. Maybe at the end of the day, when their prices all go up, we can start selling them some of our energy at the end of the day. But Madam Chair, I'm going to go ahead and make a motion that we support staff's recommendation that we move forward on this contract. Thank you.
Second.
Very good. We have a motion on the floor by Member Hannon and a second by Member Cox. And I will cede the floor to Member Tiedemann for comments.
Yes, Member Hannon just beat me to the punch of making the motion, but I just wanted to say it was an excellent presentation. I'm really happy to see us having a geothermal project on here, as that's rare to see, and it's kind of one of the best types of energy we can get. And especially happy as I know the president of Geothermex, who's always advocating for more geothermal, so I'll be happy to be able to tell her that we're actually doing that.
This is very exciting, I have to say. Any other comments, colleagues? I will add mine at this time. For some reason, Instagram kept on advertising geothermal policy to me a year ago, and it prompted me to ask Nick, hey, how come we don't have any geothermal in our pipeline yet? And so I have to give kudos to staff for using our previous RFP, that was issued before this mandate came through, and evaluating those applicants for this standard. So it's great to be ahead of the curve. Geothermal is expensive, but as Howard mentioned, biomass is more expensive. So I really appreciate staff for looking out for our bottom line. And it's exciting to be, a part of a different kind of renewable energy. So I hope staff is letting us know. We saw briefly in the slides that there are a few projects that will be coming online by the end of the year. So I hope you'll let us know when that's happening, so we can kind of get a glimpse at what each of those projects actually looks like when they're in action. I know I'd love to see, at least, some video, photographs, whatever representation you could share. But we do have a motion and a second on the table. At this time, I will ask our clerk to please call the roll.
May I get clarification? Member Cox, what city are you from? Entity?
I'm Fremont.
Fremont, thank you.
And I hope you got my last voting. I'm not sure that you heard it clearly. I was on the road there, so hopefully you got that. Or I wrote it in also.
Yes, I did. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, with that, City of Albany?
Yes.
City of Livermore?
Yes, with great pleasure.
Thank you. City of Piedmont?
Yes.
City of San Leandro?
Aye.
City of Tracy?
Yes.
City of Oakland?
Aye.
City of Emeryville?
Aye.
City of Hayward?
Aye.
City of Union City?
Aye.
City of Pleasanton?
Aye.
City of Fremont?
Aye.
Thank you. City of Newark?
Aye.
County of Alameda? Of those present, unanimous vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. That will bring us to item 15. This is our last action item. This is to authorize the CEO to negotiate and execute a contract extension with NCPA to provide wholesale energy services.
This will be me as well. Lori, if you can pull up that item memo, please. Item 15, that would be great. I think this will be a relatively quick item for us.
Oh, give me a minute here. I'm sorry.
Sure. As she does that, I'll just give a little bit more background. This one, as noted, this is an action item. We are seeking approval from the board to adopt a resolution authorizing the CEO to negotiate and execute a contract extension with Northern California Power Authority for up to a 5-year term.
No, I was doing good until now.
If it's helpful at all, Lori, I could also screen share. I have it in front of me, so just let
Yeah,
me
I
know.
don't know. I've lost the sharing part of it.
Colleagues, if you have your full packet open, for me, it's page 246. If you'd like to follow along, I think it's just a 2-page memo.
Yeah. Why don't I
Here it is.
really share that? Can folks see that?
Yes.
Okay, great. So as noted, this is authorization for the CEO to negotiate and execute a contract extension with NCPA for up to 5 years. We originally entered a contract with NCPA to provide wholesale energy services back in March of 2018. That contract was a 2-year contract with options to extend it for additional 1-year periods. We did that since our launch. We reissued an RFP in August of 2021, so towards the end of last year, and received responses in September from 5 counterparties. You can see them listed: Boston Energy, NCPA, the Energy Authority, Tenaska, and Z Global. And we had 2 staff members in our Power Resources team review each of the 5 proposals and follow up. We basically shortlisted 2 of those parties, NCPA and Tenaska, and did further interviews and evaluation of the services that were being proposed, and ultimately arrived at a recommendation to move forward with NCPA. Again, NCPA is a public agency. They are a JPA formed by a number of municipal utility members. And so they are certainly well versed in providing this type of a service. The services that they generally offer under this wholesale energy service, I would say the biggest one and primarily what we utilize scheduling coordinator services. And that is, they are literally scheduling our energy on a day ahead and on an hourly basis. So operationally, they have redundancy with multiple sites to ensure that they can do that with no disruption. In addition to that, they help us manage various regulatory reporting requirements, such as with RA. They help us with our congestion revenue rights services, more broad kind of portfolio management support, middle office risk and credit support services, and deal capture and reporting. But the big one really is as scheduling coordinator services, something that all load serving entities must have in order to actually schedule their load into CAISO. The cost of the contract begins at $693,000 per year and has a 2% escalation factor per year. And that is in line with what our original price was with them approximately 4 years ago. So they did not increase the price other than this 2% escalation that we've seen year to year. It's been a good partnership with them. They serve as a good sounding board. They've been a reliable team for us. And again, they are a public agency that serves a number of other municipal utilities. And they also serve a handful of other CCAs in this capacity. So with that, we are seeking that approval. So I will wrap that up there and take any questions.
Very good. Colleagues, do you have any questions on this item? Lori, do you mind stopping shares? Oh, actually, that's you, Howard, isn't it? Yeah, stop sharing so I can see my colleagues. Thank you. Colleagues, any questions on this? I have a question. Roughly, what is the price based on? Is it based on the amount of customers we have, accounts?
No,
how do they calculate that?
So I can't necessarily say how they calculate it, but they didn't. Their basis of that price for us is not based off of customers. So, for example, when we expanded to 3 new member cities, they did not adjust the pricing in order to do that. And I think that's reasonable in the sense that this type of a service is not more work if you have more customers.
Okay, really, that was my second question. If we were to expand our territory in the next 5 years, would our price increase?
I would not anticipate that. That's certainly not part of the contract. And we have not seen that in the past with the expansion of services. Alternatively, with somebody like SMUD, where there are data and billing provider, that is based off number of customer accounts. This service is not based off of load or account number. Okay. And that, again, I think that's because the work itself tends to be kind of fixed, even if you're a small entity versus a large entity. The work itself does not really dramatically change.
Very good. Thank you for that clarification. Member Cox.
I was wondering, where is the headquarters of this joint power NCPA? Where are they located?
They're in Roseville. So just a couple hours north of us. We visited
Sacramento. Yeah. Now, is it a lot of who are the other entities taking advantage that joined in on this group?
So the CCAs who are really customers, there is San Jose and then Valley Clean Energy as well. So those are the 2 other CCAs. Oh. In terms of members, they have, and I'm giving you an approximate number, but something around a dozen or 15 public municipal utilities of, generally speaking, smaller cities that have municipal utilities have joined together to form this joint powers authority in order to collectively manage their own procurement and such. So like, they as an entity do much more than just scheduling coordinated services. That is primarily what we use them for, but they service their membership base just as we serve our members here. So they manage all of the procurement processes, capacity needs, contracting, things like that. And so they are specifically Northern California. There's actually a Southern California one called SCAPA, which is set up the same way. It's a number of municipal utility entities in Southern California, dozen plus. So it's a common enough model where you have these fairly small utilities that are leanly staffed. They sort of band together and get more economies of scale that way.
Which makes sense. That's the right thing to do. Thank you. Thank you for explaining that part.
Thank you, Member Cox, for the good question. Anyone else have any questions for staff? All right, seeing none, we will look for public comment at this time. I'll just remind the public that you would use the raise hand feature in Zoom or press *9 to be recognized. And I'll check in with Lori to see if anyone has submitted comment cards or comments.
I have not received any comment cards and I see no hands raised at this time.
Very good. We'll go ahead and close public comment on this item. And colleagues, I'll be looking for
I'm ready to make a motion.
Very good. Go ahead, Member Cox.
I so move.
Very good. Oh, I didn't catch who the second one was. That Livermore?
I was trying, but no, Karina Lopez
Go
beat me
ahead.
to it.
Go ahead, Trish. Go ahead. You could have it.
Okay. Sure.
All right. Good volley. So we have a motion on the floor by Member Cox and a second by Member Monroe. Colleagues, this is a last chance for any deliberation or conversation on this topic. Okay, seeing none, we will turn to our clerk to please call the roll.
City of Albany,
Yes.
City of Livermore,
Yes.
City of Piedmont,
Yes.
City of San Leandro,
Aye.
City of Tracy,
Yes.
City of Oakland,
Aye.
City of Emeryville,
Aye.
City of Hayward,
Aye.
Union City.
Aye.
Thank you. City of Pleasanton,
Aye.
City of Fremont,
Aye.
City of Dublin. Dublin is absent. City of Newark
Aye.
and County of Alameda is absent too, I believe.
Correct.
It's passed by unanimous vote. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you so much. Colleagues, that will bring us to board member and staff announcements, including requests to place items on future agendas. Does anyone have anything to let us know before we end this meeting? Member Hannon, go ahead.
Sorry, Madam Chairman. I'm not a real expert in geothermal. I wouldn't mind if staff gave a brief presentation on how the whole geothermal process works. And I'm most interested in understanding is whether or not there's any significant environmental impacts as a result of the geothermal process. So if staff wouldn't mind scheduling just a brief presentation on that, I would certainly appreciate it.
Great. And do folks agree with that? I would like to see that as well. So we have.
So I take it we should do that with the full board as opposed to FAP.
Yes.
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 I think everyone would be able to benefit from that, especially if we have a project that we just approved that's going to be coming online. But don't take 6 years or 4 years to give us the presentation. Bring it before that. Any other requests for future agenda items? I just want to make a few comments. This new year has brought with it new challenges for all of us and for our health and in our communities. So I'm wishing all of you safe and healthy evening. And we do hard work. I hope everyone's taking care of themselves. And I also, I hope she doesn't mind me calling her out, but I know Member Narum has a new member in her family. I wanted to congratulate her in this public forum. So congratulations, Kathy.
Oh, thank you. I'm actually here with the baby. That's why you heard the background noise. I apologize.
I suspected. So, you know,
Show the
wonderful, wonderful that the new addition to your family can listen.
Thank you. Mother and daughter, or mother and son actually are doing fine, doing
Oh,
great.
Good.
Can you actually hold up the child?
I'm sorry?
Can you hold up the child?
He's sleeping right now. Otherwise I would.
No pictures?
I think my daughter would yell at me next time, maybe.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
And as far as future items go, I just wanted to thank staff for responding to the letters and public comment on carbon intensity and on the community innovation grants. I look forward to hearing both of those items in the future. And with that, I'll bring us to item 17, which is adjournment. The time is 7:27 p.m. And I will see you next at this board meeting on February 16th. Good night, everyone. And thank you to Vice Chair Karina Lopez for kicking off this meeting very adeptly. Really appreciate you. Good night, everyone.
Thank you.
Vice Chair. Be safe.